Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mike. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this conversation. But first, I have to ask, you have some interesting pictures right behind you.
Um,
Tell me about those. Those are very cool.
yeah, so I'm really into sci-fi, as the pictures on the wall show. So I've got some of my favorite movies up here. There's Star Wars, of course. There's Odyssey 2001. There's Alien on there. So I am a bit of a closeted nerd, which my wife didn't know at the time. She thought I was a surfer because I had long hair. And she later learned that that was not who I was. And yet she married me anyway for over 25 years at this point. So now she knows.
Yeah, now she knows, and she's stuck with you. That's fantastic. And 25 years. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know we're going to dive into a conversation related to the multifamily space, but maybe to set some context, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself, the company that you work for, and then we'll dive right into some meaty topics.
That sounds great. All right. So my name's Daniel Waas. I'm originally from Germany. As is my wife, we moved to the US 10 years ago. We now live in beautiful Santa Barbara, working for AppFolio. So I am the VP of product marketing for AppFolio. So I work between our product and engineering teams and all our customer facing teams. So marketing teams, sales teams, client services teams, to really be the translation layer and glue between what we're building and how that drives value for our customers, and then how to help our organization explain that value and explain why it drives value to the customer. If everything works out, so that's the job, and the company is AppFolio. So we are a company that provides software to the property management industry and to multifamily. Uh, Really the system of record, and have a lot of friendly, big competitors in the space that we like to butt heads with. And that's us.
I think I think that's great. And I mean, competition is good, right? It really drives what some would say it drives innovation.
It does, yeah. There's a lot happening in the space. There's a lot happening in technology specifically, and so it's an exciting time to be in tech. I would say it's an exciting time for the world overall, in terms of just like the pace of change.
Yeah, wow, that's a big statement there. I want to come back and unpack the pace of change somewhere in the through line of this conversation because that is absolutely true. Why don't we start with a sort of a big overarching topic, and maybe you can unpack it for us, and that is sort of unveiling the performance gap. And kind of
Yes.
talk to us a little bit about that.
So, so a big part of AppFolio is really like working with our customers to understand, hey, what's going on for you? What situation are we in? And how can we, as a software company, help you uh, deal with your situation better, build a better business, deliver better outcomes for your residents, deliver better outcomes for your investors? How can we help you really drive the performance of your business? All right. Um, and so as we've done that over the years, right, when we talk to customers, so we have a customer advisory board, sitting together with the customer advisor board, at one point I asked, like, like, explain to me, like, what does performance mean to you? Like, what is great performance? And it was kind of interesting because uh, the customers at first, like, were in the room with us, went to, well, it's operational efficiency, right? I need to be a great operator. I need to have my processes down. I need to have my SOPs well documented, and I need people to like execute it to the letter. And then if I'm doing that, then I'm performing. And it was interesting because I was like, that was not my going in position of like what I was trying to get at. So I sat there for a moment, and luckily then another customer picked up and was like, well, but it's also the resident experience, right? It's also the value we deliver for our communities and how we build community. And then another customer chimed in and was like, yeah, but it's also about the return, right? Like in the end, we're in it to generate an investment return for our owners and our investors. And so it quickly became apparent that there's like a little bit of a disconnect between, all right, like I'm operating and like starting with COVID, right? We've had this big focus on operational efficiency. And I think like what it can kind of lead to is that you're really stuck in the weeds a little bit and you miss this opportunity to zoom out. And so when I like when we looked at this, we're like, okay, like what is the performance gap to us, or like where do we see a gap? We see a gap between historically, property management software was built to digitize tasks, right? So hey, I have a task and it's a paper-based task. I have a paper lease and I need to deal with this paper lease and I have a board of physical keys, right? Like so, hey, property management software, go digitize this for me so that I can deal with it better and deal with it more efficiently, right? But ultimately, that is not performance, right? Like that is just you trying to make your day better. And sure, there is like efficiency to be gained in that. There's productivity to be gained in that. So digitization is obviously not a bad thing, but it is not the end state, right? And I think we talked about innovation a little, or like the change and the pace of change. We believe there is now a moment in the market where we can go from sure this digitizes the work, but you still do the work to no, wait a minute, we can go way further than that. We can actually help you do some of the work so that you can focus on all of these outcomes for the residents, outcomes for the investors, and like kind of like zoom out, right? Like don't be so myopically focused on the day to day, but zoom out. Wow, that was long.
No, that was perfect. It's a great setup, and what comes to mind for me is sort of in a pithy way is, to your point, we spend so much time working in the business that we forget to, or we don't have time to work on the business.
Yes.
So instead of thinking strategically, we're thinking reactionary, in a reactionary way, right?
Yes.
And that while you do produce outcomes, you're probably not optimizing your business.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that because like that is another piece of this is like we call it like going from reactive to proactive, right? And so what's the reality? The reality is, well, I've got phone calls to handle. I've got like an investor that has question. I've got residents that are unhappy and that have an issue. And so a lot of the actual work is like reactive work, right? And like, great, I have a responsibility to my investors to like handle this well, right? Like, isn't that my job? That like isn't my job that I manage this well? And I would argue that that doesn't have to like, yes, of course, that is your job. Well, how much time do you still need to dedicate to that job, right? Like we had a couple of 2 years ago, I think we did some research with together with NAA, and we looked at like, hey, how much time is spent on busy work on your team? So we asked staff, property management staff, we asked like, hey, how much of your time is spent on busy work? And I think it was like 37% or so. So it's like, hey, basically a third of my time is spent on stuff that doesn't drive a lot of value and that I don't want to be doing in the first place. And so, okay, well, we can take a lot we can make a lot of that busy work go away now. There is technology now that actually can take that on. Okay, so now what are you going to do with that time, right? And I think the answer is you can do with that time the things that only people are great at, and the things that you haven't been getting to so far.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And maybe we dig into that a little bit further, talking about. I love the word paradigm shift, or the phrase rather, a paradigm shift, and it seems like that the technology you're sort of teasing at there is the catalyst for this paradigm shift, and where we're moving into more of a, a real estate performance management system. So maybe you can sort of tease that out for us.
Yes. So if you think of I talked about like this task based world. Like if you think of property management software, right? Property management software was really designed to solve the problem of digitizing tasks. That's the job, right? Like sometimes there's like in software, there's the jobs to be done framework, right? Like, hey, which job is the software meant to do? And the job it is meant to do is to manage tasks. Okay, well, but we've just said that there's now an opportunity from a technology perspective to no longer have to facilitate tasks for you. So then what is the higher order thing? Okay, like if the higher order thing is like you want to get to performance, and not just for yourself, for the entire value chain, for like your customers too, then we have to shift the focus from like, okay, like the job is to make tasks better to, oh no, the job is to drive performance for the customer. And then that means that's like, that really is a paradigm shift, because like now what the software needs to do is different, right? So if I like in software as a service in SaaS, there is the concept of the system of record, right?
Mhm.
Like, which essentially like, hey, a PMS is your system of record. You know, like your leases are in there, your resident records are in there, your work orders are in there, right? Like everything that is a record sits in the system, and like this is all your data, and like here it is. Okay, so now you have the system of record. From our perspective, that was built for doing task management. That is still relevant. You still need a system of record. All that stuff still needs to live somewhere, right?
That's right.
But it's no longer sufficient, right? So you need a system of action, is what we call it. That is a system that actually does the work, right? So hey, we now have um, like a complete workflow engine where you can predefine what needs to happen, and within that workflow engine, you can now assign AI agents to specific chains of tasks. And so you're no longer having to do this part of the busy work. That busy work is now under your control, completely automated, right? Okay, so that's one piece. And then it goes all the way into the actual conversation, like with a resident, into an actual conversation with an owner, right? Like, so it goes pretty far. Sweet. So now you have like, that's one shift, right? You go from system of record, now you have a system of action, which by the way, you can solve either as like, hey, this is now a new part of my PMS, or there's also point solutions in the market that say like, hey, you don't need this in the PMS, like I'm doing this for you, right? Like you should buy a point solution that does this, right? And then, but that is insufficient also, because like if I think of like it does your work, what does that get at? It gets at productivity, so it gets at your bottom line. Okay, so now I have a better bottom line. I'm more productive, more efficient. Some of the work doesn't need to happen. Some things are maybe even going towards the top line, right? Like, so hey, I have a better renewal rate, right? And so okay, like goes in the direction of your top line. But there's like a whole other component, and like we call that the system of growth, which is, well, what can we do to drive top line performance for you? What can we do to drive revenue for you? What can we do to drive value for your stakeholders, your clients, right? Um, and that is like today, it's like if you think multifamily, maybe you think of like an insurance captive, right? Like, so, hey, like this is a service I can provide that drives revenue back to me. Maybe you think of internet. Hey, here's like something that I can bundle and resell and create as a revenue stream. So the third component in that is, how do we drive an experience for residents? How do we drive an experience for investors that actually gives you an opportunity to create value that you can turn into revenue? And like in our mind, like then these three systems together, yes, you still need your system of record. You need a system of action that actually drives your productivity. And you need a system of growth that actually drives your top line and drives the economics. Those three things together are now what we call the system of performance, right? So, hey, we going from like this solves the job is to manage tasks to the job is to actually drive the performance of your business.
Yeah, that so it it brings to mind I want to back all the way up to this paradigm shift. What I heard you say in that is, hey, I can shift from being a transaction driven uh, individual and or organization to a relationship driven organization, because now I have time. You've given back time so that I can actually focus on a team member, on a consumer, on an investor, etc. Because now all this task oriented stuff or transaction oriented stuff is sort of, let's call it, disappeared into the background.
Yeah. Yes. And like, where do we go as humans when we think of that? We're like, yeah, sure. Like, so me individually, I'm like, okay, like, so now I have like 33% less busy work or whatever. Like, okay, like I have like a third of my time can now go to my Instagram. Or like, right, like that's potentially what my management team thinks, right? So one thing is like, what do you do with that time, and like, how do you really drive value? So that's one concern. Like, well, are they actually, is everybody going to do something valuable with that time, right? And then I think like the other concern is like, okay, like, well, am I no longer needed then to do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting because we did some research that I think is not published yet together with IRM, where we contrasted organizations that are using AI and encouraging use of AI and that have implemented AI, compared to organizations that are skeptical of AI and that like are staying away from it. And then we asked like, hey, like if you think of like what will this do to work, right? Like, are you gonna reduce resourcing? Are you going to have your people do different things, right? Like, how do you see this? Only 8% thought of, hey, this is going to go to reduction. And so the wide majority of organizations is like, no, I can now actually go shift this to creating something that's higher value. And then like there's another interesting stat. This is from a while ago. I don't know when we researched this, but like we had an open-ended question in a survey to staff. Right. And it was a pretty big sample, like 5,000 or so plus respondents. And one of the questions we had in there was, why did you get into real estate? Right. Like, and it was an open-ended question. And I was pretty new to real estate at the time, coming from software. Um, and and I thought there must be a lot of reasons, right? Like, and then like when I see the answers, then I can kind of get a lay of the land. But there weren't a lot of reasons. It was like 90% plus of the respondents in this open-ended question said something to the degree of like, I like working with people. Um and so do you like entering invoices after hours? Probably no. Do you like, like looking for the license plate of the resident in unit 23? Probably no, right? Like, so, okay, like what are the things you actually like doing? And I think this actually aligns really well, right? Like, so, um, what are you trying to do as a business in multifamily? You're trying to, and you said it, right? Like you're trying to invest in the relationships, right? The relationships with the resident, the relationship with my investors, and like, but not only that, not only is that like the business need, even like my staff, 90+% of my staff are in this for the relationship. So I actually think there's a really nice overlap between what the business needs and what everybody of us as humans want, that actually really goes together nicely in this.
Yeah,
But
I couldn't agree more. And that's a nice segue into it's so okay, that's all great and wonderful. It aligns with what our sort of innate need in this industry is, and that is to be in relationship and be in service of others. Um, I wanna put definition to a word before we unpack this next thing. And you use the word agent. Um, or I've heard it termed agentic workforce sometimes. So before we dig into what that actually or how we actually make practical application of that internal to your system, tell us what that means. Tell our
okay.
audience what that means.
So I feel like under intense scrutiny by my product team now. Luckily, they're not in the room. So if I screw this up, it's all on me. No, like the way I'm thinking of agents is really that there is autonomy. So if you think how AI has developed, and especially how generative AI more recently has developed, right? And like we all know the tools, ChatGPT and so on, right? Like uh, it's generative, and like the first iteration of that in products of the industry then is like, hey, here's like an assistant, and you can talk to it and it'll fetch stuff for you, but you need to prompt it, right? So pretty much every time you want something, you have to prompt it. And so in my mind, like if we talk about agentic, the main difference is that the agent can like work within a context and take action independent of you prompting it all the time, right? And so the way that works within AppFolio is, we've got like RealmX, which is essentially our AI that's built foundationally into AppFolio, like really pervasive. And then Realm X has a couple of permutations of which of how you interact with it. One of them is called Realm X Flows, which is essentially a workflow engine that lets you visualize your workflow. So think your SOPs, right, like documented in the software, and like now you could say, well, okay, that is traditional automation, right? Like, so hey, I have a process. I like, let's take renewals, right? Like, so hey, I have a renewals process. I have clear expectations. I know what works in renewals. Like, I know when to remind. I know what kind of like message resonates and so on. So let me codify this process, right? And so um, now with agents, I can give an agent autonomy within that context, right? So I can say, hey, like let's say the resident comes back with, well, actually, like, if you gave me a bigger concession, I would renew. Well, in a traditional workflow automation, you're now like, okay, great, like let's escalate this to a person somewhere that can make a decision of like, are we willing to offer that concession? What are all the puts and takes in this, right? In an agentic model, I can say, okay, I take this entire workflow and I say, whatever comes back from the resident in response within boundaries, agentic AI can make decisions on. Right. And you can set the context for that, right? Like, so, hey, here's like our pricing matrix and like what we're willing to do. And like, yes, if you sign up for like an 18-month renewal, maybe there's more in there for you. Agent has that context and can act on your behalf, right? And it's kind of like interesting what we've found in that. And like another thing then was like, okay, well, what's the concern then? A concern is like, okay, do I want to relinquish that control?
Mm,
And the good news is you don't have to, right? Like you can decide, is this a flow that I want to control and that gets escalated to a human decider? Or is this a flow that I feel confident within constraints can be handled by the AI? And I can do that fluidly for pretty much every process. It's not like a switch that I need to turn on for the entire system. I can decide that by workflow, essentially. Is
that
that
makes
helpful?
it. It's very helpful, and I think one of the things that I think it's important for an audience member to hear, or viewer or listener, is the agent. What I heard you say is it knows when to do a soft handoff to a human to complete a transaction if it falls outside of a boundary. If you run up against the boundary, it has a
And it knows because you've provided the boundaries, right? Like, so you've loaded the context, you've designed the workflow for the agent to work within. And that's also like, that's the benefit. So another thing that we sometimes talk about is with customers is like, I'll, like I can build an off the shelf agent and I can like let it interact with the system. And like, I've tinkered with this and I've like, you just like, like hook it up to the API and so on. It's like, yes, does it know your business context?
yeah.
And it doesn't, right? And so, okay, so I think like that's the crucial combination where I talked about like, hey, you need these systems together. Why do you need the system of record? Why is that important? Well, it holds all your business context. So now if you and like we have that with some of the point solutions, right? Like if you use the point solutions, well, okay, now you have to figure out how to give the point solution the business context. So now we're talking APIs and integrations and what level of access these APIs and integrations have, right? Like, so I'm going to speak for all systems of record at this point and say like, yeah, your point solution never have that same level of context that the system of record has. I want to like go back to the renewals example of just the power of this, right? Even in just automating the flow, right? You can have an outsized result. So we had a customer. So when we launched Realm X Flows, we had a customer that said, "Well, sure, but like, like let's implement that at one property." Because like it's like it sounds risky. There's AI involved and so on. And like, okay, let's do this at one property. And it's a switch. So they hit the switch and it's like, okay, great. Like they've documented the workflow. This is now on for this like one property. Um, and they look at their property managers and look how well is everybody doing. And there was a property manager that did exceedingly well. And they looked at it. And they found that's where they had turned on the renewals. They hadn't even thought much about it. They had just turned it on, and then they saw it in their own performance dashboards of like, oh, wait a minute, there's something happening here. And they were looking at like, okay, what has caused the change? And what has caused the change is like turning on the flow. Okay, so they then said, well, like, how about we turn this on everywhere? And they had an 8% increase in renewals overnight.
Wow.
And the customer, look, we have a nice video that we played at one of our conferences of the customer saying, "I never swear." And I said, "Holy f!" When I saw it the next day, right? So it's really impactful. And now this is Realm Flow. This is pre-agents, right? So this is just by virtue of the consistency of execution, right? Like, hey, I'm the machine. I can like remind the resident this millisecond that whatever the 90-day threshold is hit, I'll have the message out, right? And I'll remind every time on time, like, versus like us as humans will like, okay, well, I got stuff to do. And like when I'll get around to it, I'll send the notices and so on. And so just by virtue of like doing something that the AI is really great at, because it does this all day long, it can do it like without tiring and so on. And it does the stuff like, do you want to be in the business of like sending 15 reminders? No, that again, right? Like that's not like relationship is typically not I've annoyed you with 5 text messages. It's the values in the actual conversation, right? And so this like 8% immediate jump is just based on consistency. So now imagine if you go in there and you enable the agentic capabilities, and you can now make flexible renewal offers based on your context. And like now we've talked about one super specific example because I think it's kind of like nice to, like put your mind in it. But the same thing is like leasing, creating showings. Like, can I bring my, this is from our product managers, can I bring my 50-pound chihuahua? It's like, what does your pet policy say? Right. And like the system is now actually able to like, it knows the pet policy and it can like self-sufficiently answer these things. You don't need to make a decision on the 50-pound chihuahua anymore. You can have, and so you can drop a dog treat off instead. And that goes across all the workflows like maintenance, leasing, accounting, right? Like, so, and that's actually like, right, like this is what, what we've launched, at our conference Future as of the airing of this, yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Is Romex Performers, which really goes, into like both, maintenance and leasing, and then into what we call the resident performer. So 3 agents that are living within these workflows and that you can build into steps in the flows and have them completely take control, or give them guardrails of how much of the control you want to relinquish.
Definitely. I wanna tease something out. I'm gonna make a statement. If it's completely off base, just tell me that. But so in terms of having context and in my head, using that context as a catalyst for learning, that is the LLM or the agent learning, is it fair to assume that that learning is taking context, but also marrying it together with sort of a broad consumer behavior, but also potentially a very specific consumer behavior, especially if they're internal to the system, they're living in one of your communities, they're having interactions through your system. So that element of very specialized or very individualized learning germane to that customer, is it is it taking that kind of data point into consideration when it's making a millisecond decision for renewals or any other sort of thing they're trying to transact in this?
So it takes into account the context it knows, and so like tell me if I'm understanding or not understanding the question right. Like, but
Yeah.
if I think of a specific resident for renewal, right? Like it knows the history,
Yes.
and so it can take that context into account, right? So, which is like, I think like what makes it better than a rules based approach. I could now say, hey, I'm gonna like build like a giant decision tree of like if
Yes.
this, then this, and but if this other thing, then so and so, right? Like, and then I need to lay this all out, right? And so I don't need to do the same level of decision tree for an agent concept. I need to define the constraints, which is like part of the system, right? Like, so in the system, you actually define the constraints. You upload, give the system the context, right? But within that, the agent has the contextual information to base on that.
And maybe to more practically speaking, Sparrow, sorry, I got off way esoteric with that, but so if Mary tends to engage on Tuesdays at 4:30 in the afternoon, then the agent is versed enough to know, hey, let's drop, and she is more likely to engage through text message. Then the agent knows, hey, let's drop a text message to her at 4:53 on Tuesday afternoon because that's when she's going to she's at least going to engage with us and potentially make a decision.
So I'm not deep enough in the product to be able to promise that.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think like that would be a question to ask our product management team, and like we can get into that and like really understand like, hey, how much of pre-behavioral context does it take in at this point? I don't know the answer to that, to be honest. Right, like of what exactly it does with just the contextual information on the resident itself at this point, but that is definitely in the realm of possibility. I just don't know if it does that today.
Yeah, no worries. And I just, that's maybe a preface for a round two that we
Yeah.
do at some point because
I mean, I would love to send our product team in for like, do explore the details and get to the meat of it.
yeah, I love this stuff. So I appreciate you at least entertaining that idea and that potential to do that as a follow up.
Absolutely.
So I know that you and your team and you sort of led in with this, that you've done a lot of research in with customer advisory boards or user advisory boards. I think you cited the number of like 5,000 as being a subject set. Um, You've had testing, you've had your benchmark report that came out, I think recently, or is coming out as the airing of this episode. Renters preference report, I think, is another one.
Yes.
By the way, I print all these things. I apologize in advance, but I I print them. I write all over them.
No, all right. Like that is perfectly all right. Actually, James, who does all these reports together, like both our own and then together with NAA and IREM is on my team. So like it's all thanks to James. So shout out to James at this point.
So, Daniel, we have talked about a lot here in terms of the practical application of AppFolio's workflows. We've defined Agentic for our audience, both listeners and viewers. But I will tell you, those audiences, that audience, both viewers and listeners, they love stats. I've learned this over a long bit of time doing this podcast. They love stats. They want to know, what does this really do for me statistically, so I can go to the people in my organization and help make a case for putting something like this in place. So why don't you, I know you do a lot of data collection, you probably have a lot of stats sitting in front of you. Why don't you just hit us with the highlights?
Nice. All right, I can rattle off stats galore. Here we go. All right, like let's start with Realmx messages, which is basically like it creates messages for you, so you don't have to write yourself. You just prompt it, it'll creates it for you. 26 seconds saved for every message created with Realmx messages. We then looked at like, okay, well, how many messages is that? So that's like 3 weeks saved per year on like just writing comms back and forth. We know a big part of the busy work is just like communicating, right? Like sending messages back and forth. So, hey, 26-second per message. Like if you total it up to the year, it gets to be a big number.
Yeah.
What else we got? So we've got lead nurturing flow. So with Realmx flows, you can nurture leads. So on average, the customers that have turned that on fill vacant units 5.2 days faster. Um, yeah, what else do I have? Average reduction in the time from when an application is submitted to approval with customers that have turned on Realmx flows for rental application. 1.5 days. So 1.5 days faster from application submission to actually being able to approve. That's another one. Then we have 28.2% reduction in accounts and collections with our AI-based income verification product. What else do I have? I have like probably one more that I can throw out here, and that is oh, turn time. Who doesn't love turn time? So, average reduction in the time it takes to turn a unit reported by Realm-X Flows users, 1.2 days faster.
Gosh, I got to tell you, this is I'm going to make a sort of a selfish remark here, but it's in the context of business. I've been in this business for 30 years, and everything I hear you saying, and I'm an operator. I serve as a chief operating officer, so the dollars and cents really matter to me, right? In terms of serving our ownership groups and our investors, and so everything that I just heard you say goes straight to the bottom line in terms of a better enhanced NOI, which is very important to our investors, and cash flow is very important to our investors. But I also, which is probably more near and dear to my heart, I hear giving time back to our team members to invest in the service of the people that actually live in our communities and work in our communities.
Yes,
And even more broadly speaking, beyond our lot lines that we call apartment communities, giving time back to get out into the community and actually nurture relationships.
absolutely. And just like even like right, even the resident experience from like going to from application to approval. Right, like faster, right? Like while I'm because that can be an anxiety driving thing for me, right? Like, hey, am I going to get accepted in this community? And so, yeah, I think like for all of these, there's an inside perspective of efficiency, and there's an outside perspective on like what kind of experience does that drive for my client.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would love to give you the opportunity to tell people where they can learn more about AppFolio, and maybe where they could potentially reach out to you directly if they have questions as a result of this time we've spent together today.
Absolutely. The best way to learn about everything that we've got going on is actually our homepage, appfolio.com, which like goes into all the depth and like actually has the quotes. And if I've misquoted anything, right, like or misstated a stat, then the website will hopefully correct me. So that's all on there combined with customer stories, like the whole idea of like what is a performance platform. So we've got a whole page dedicated to that where we really just talk about like okay like how do we see the shift, why do we think that's different, and really why do you need to shift your attention from like a task-based approach to this holistic approach and like why that is now possible, so taking a look at the technology. So at folio.com, and I would love to chat and geek out. I am great on marketing and stats. My multifamily geekiness is like still developing. So I'd love to learn from all of you too. 5 years in the industry, like I like every time I meet, we talked about Lisa Tracine earlier. When we meet again after another year, I'm like I've gotten yet more dangerous. So I'm trying to become more dangerous by the year, or by the hour. So hit me up. The easiest way to do that is LinkedIn. So I'd love to connect on LinkedIn, and then we can chat from there and get on a call and hang out together.
Sounds great. Daniel, I really appreciate you investing a little bit of time with us here at the Multifamily Collective and Multifamily Media Network. And I look forward to catching up with you at some point in real life down the road.
Yes. I hope to see you soon in person. Thank you so much for having me, Mike.